Hello and welcome back. So, been really looking forward to this one. Today we're looking at the One Ring Through the Doors of Durin, the Moria expansion for the One Ring RPG. Now, if you're watching this and you own the Lord of the Rings role-playing book, assume that this review covers both of these. The majority of what I'm going to be talking about really is very little to do with actual rules. And more to do with the feel of the game. So the feel of the RPG, how well does this translate Tolkien's world? So very much consider this to be a review of both, because although there are minor rules differences, much less understated than the core rule differences, because the flow of both these books goes in the same way, and all of the different adjustments in terms of adventuring and that kind of thing are very similar between the two. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through the doors of Durin, but very much so consider this to be a review also of Shadow of Khazad-dum. So, right, a little bit of background about my relationship to the One Ring and Lord of the Rings in general, and how I think this stacks up to other releases in this game system. So, I am a huge fan of the One Ring. I like all of the expansions that have come out so far. They're very good. The core book is brilliant from a kind of big world top-down view of Middle Earth and the sort of things that can happen there. The Eriador books, which came out after the core book and prior to this, are very good at that kind of world building in terms of the area of Eriador, and also gives some good indication as to the wider world as well. We go from the Shire into Eriador and cover quite a lot of that area there, and this is the next natural progression into Moria. But I have to say that for me, Through the Doors of Durin is a much better publication than anything else that's gone before it, both as a source book and really, I know that Tales from the Lone Lands is, it's an adventuring book, but the potential adventuring that comes from this book far surpasses it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through this book and kind of we'll cover the main parts of it, the main sections of the book, and I'll tell you what I think about each individual piece, and then I will give you my overall thoughts on the whole thing. I haven't actually prepared that much for this. All I know is that I really like what I'm looking at. So we go through it. First of all, we have the map of Moria. Very, very good. There's a fold-out map of this, which I've actually filed away in my my One Ring starter set box. But basically it's this map. It's a very large version of this map, and it's great. This map itself is superb, and it's very good later on when you start to go through all of the different, effectively dungeons, but the various parts of Moria that are detailed within this book, and it does follow this map very, very well. So this is a great reference to go through, but yeah, detailed much better later on. So our contents, there are main sections in this book: introduction, and at the gates the trumpets rang, journeys in the dark, fell foes, the mansions of the dwarves, which is the biggest section in the book by far, and it is in there that the magic of this book really comes through. That is by far and away the best part of this book. It's fantastic. And then we have a really interesting solo play section in this book. This solo play section appears in the Lord of the Rings role-playing book as well, and it's very good as well. It is a very, very good way to put the solo into conventional RPGs. Very, very good system there, and we'll cover that later on as well. we will in many places see fantastic artwork like this. So there is the door of Durin. We can see various parts of the Watcher in the water, waiting for people to come across and knock on Durin's door, try and gain access. But the artwork is, you can't see me now, but I'm doing the chef's kiss. Really, really excellent in how it kind of goes along with the actual book itself. Then we get quite a long introduction into the book. This is kind of written as a bit of a kind of history lesson, which gets even more in depth later on. We go through the full history of Moria itself. There's a small part here which explains all of the various different sections of the book, which is very good as well. But let's go through all of the different stuff. So yeah, this kind of historical part is very good. It would be great for some of the more closely dated things in the Third Age, because it might help you to kind of, if you're GMing this game or the lore master for this game, it might give you areas that you might want to set your scene in. Next up, chapter 2. And at the gates the trumpets rang. This part discusses several groups interested in Moria in the present era. These groups might be patrons or rivals or player heroes. And it starts to talk about the campaign focus and that kind of thing, kind of dungeon delving, how, what sort of groups work well in here, what you are likely to see, information about the lore. There's some kind of rolling tables to look at a few different enemies and that kind of thing. There is, again, this all goes with the lore. So searching for Mithril, the perilous path, questing for ring lore, patrons and rivals. One company's patron might be another company's mortal foe. You can turn any of the patrons in this chapter into recurring foes who seek to stymie or block the player hero's efforts in Moria. And it details some of those here. So Moria and the wider world. So it talks about different races, but specifically their relationship to Moria. So the dwarves and Durin's folk. The dwarves of other houses. And again, we've got lots and lots of individuals here, so we can use our patrons as we choose. Patrons is important for your journeys in Moria, but not so much in when we do the solo bit, because that is generally Balin. Yeah, lots and lots of interesting peoples and options that we have to go through there. Get to the elves, the middlemen and hobbits. Yeah, heirs to the men of the west, range of the north and the men of Gondor. So very, very cool. Next we have a name of ill omen. So go about, there's a rumor table here that we can go through. Genuine rumors, famous landmarks, and obscure landmarks are very good. And then we get into a very important part which is running Moria. So the kind of how we need to approach our various campaigns as we run into the old halls of Moria. So really, really full of excellent options and lore, and not even just things that you would expect. If you've got kind of a wide and varied knowledge of the Lord of the Rings and Tolkien's work in general, you will find things in this book that you won't expect to see. So when, for example, and we'll get onto the fell foes part of the book, when you talk about things like Gandalf, there are stranger things, blah, blah, blah. In the deep parts of the world, we get into some of that stuff. We talk about perhaps some of the creatures and peoples that we might meet that we wouldn't normally expect in a Lord of the Rings book, or certainly it is well related to when you talk about that kind of thing. Chapter 3, Journey in the Dark. So this contains a set of journey rules adjusted for underground exploration, as well as a Moria specific eye awareness rules. So again, we're straight into rules proper here, but there's still enough lore embedded in kind of the pages when it starts to talk about, you know, what we're doing in our games, and that's really good. And that's something that runs through the entire book. It actually runs through all of the One Ring series anyway, but for me, none as good as what we get in this Moria expansion. So lots and lots of options here. Describing Moria, drums in the deep. So there are here, so seeking and finding, there are all sorts of different options in here. We've got groaning of the mountains, the walls around the company creak, and dust falls as the mountain shifts and settles. Let's look at another one, dark dreams. Everyone shares the same awful nightmare of running through the dark halls of Moria, pursued by a figure of smoke and fire. I wonder who that could be. So yeah, you know, so much really amazing. It's the feel of this book which I love the most. It just gets it right. It just gets Tolkien's world absolutely right. So fans of Tolkien from the movies versus fans of Tolkien just literally from the books. There's something here for everyone. I think if you've read through the books and you've got in-depth knowledge of the books, there's a lot in here that's going to make you smile, because there will be things that have gone through your mind in the past about, you know, how you might relate a certain part of the text into kind of adventuring in Moria, and you'll see the way it's described in here as well. And you know, there'll be a lot of wry smiles as you're going through it, but not in a bad way at all. Eye awareness in Moria. The core rulebook outlines the main methods for increasing a company's eye awareness score. While in Moria, the actions detailed in the following paragraphs also contribute to raising their visibility to the enemy. So, the dark deep of Moria. So Moria's been abandoned for, you know, it's swarming with orcs and has been for centuries. It's, you know, it's not well lit. That, you know, you are journeying into the dark. So things like making noise is going to be important. And there's a little noise table there. Lesser noise, which is 1 point of eye awareness, a loud noise, which is 2, or a powerful noise, which is 3. And then you've got encounters. So again, encountering the 3 major orc tribes, orcs of the Misty Mountains, the Mordor orcs, and the orcs of Udon, all have scouts and sentries. These lookouts signal encounters with enemies back to their masters, and soon the mountains crawl with orcs. So yeah, kind of escalating what goes on there. And again, the hunt threshold. The base hunt threshold for a company in Moria is set at 14, as Moria is considered a dark land. So then modifiers apply. So again, relating to rules in the One Ring core set with page numbers and that kind of thing. Revelation episodes in Moria, again, relating to page 173 to kind of flesh out the rules differences between the two. So really awesome things here. Again, lots and lots of different tables to roll on for terrors in the dark, or dire portents, an orc assault. Really, really fantastic stuff. More tables here, so random chamber generators. So whilst there are lots of chambers and locations detailed later in the book, which is going to really what we're going to get into quite deeply later on, you can roll on these tables to kind of have your random chamber generator. So you don't have to use anything in these books. You can create a chamber of its own based on a number of die results. So for example, we have chamber type. So I'll go through these quickly. An orc nest, a utility, storeroom, small dwelling, stairs, well or watercourse, guard post or armory, a forge or workshop, a large dwelling, a civic building, or a great hall. And it has similar tables for the condition. So I'll read through a few of these. So we've got blocked, we've got utterly ruined, we have burnt, despoiled, mostly intact, and a safe place to rest. The appearance table, so shunned, ancient, homely, horrified, just a few examples of the options there, and more to do with the challenge table, kind of what we're going to be doing when we're in there, what is going to be the focus of our reason for being in that room. We also have a random orc band generator, which does a similar sort of thing for these locations. Now, Fell Foes is a really interesting section of the book, because there's things in here that you will expect and there are things in here that you will not. Now, if you're not intending to GM the game, as much as there's been plenty of spoilers in here already, here we start to get into things that the GMs or lore masters will be bringing into these games, which if you're a player, you don't want to spoil it. So if you are just a player and you don't want things to be spoiled for you, then then you can carry on. But yeah, if you don't want things to be spoiled, it's time to go. Right, Fell Foes. So we're in Moria, so we would expect that there would be orcs. But we have orcs of Moria, which are different to many of the other types of orcs. We have specifically the orcs of Durin, which are tough as hell and pretty scary. And it's got different types in here. There are named characters as we get into it, named enemies and that kind of thing. Again, more different types of orcs. Messenger of Lugaburs, a black Uruk captain. So lots and lots of different things. We have dwarves, but not the dwarves that we know and love. There's no cuddly gimlies down here. We have slave dwarves, and they are basically, they've never seen the sun. They have been they're enslaved by orcs, and they just toil the mountains at the orcs, at their want for their entire lives, and they are not our friends. They are enemies of the free people. So you might come up against them. The Balrog of Moria. Balrog of Moria, you do not want to get into a fight with the Balrog of Moria. So Durin's Bane specifically has his own tables and that kind of thing, but there's a whole load of different information about the Balrog. What does it desire? What is its connection? What is the connection between the Balrog and Sauron? Very, very interesting stuff, and more things that you might want to know about. The deep places, the Middle Earth. Why is Mithril found only in Moria? Was the Balrog imprisoned, and if so, by whom? Really interesting stuff as well. There is alternate Banes. So Durin's Bane is obviously the Balrog of Moria, but there are alternatives here that you might want to think about as you're going through, and the options are the Witch King of Angmar, a dragon, a horror from the deeps. And now, horror from the deeps, that could be whatever you decide you want it to be. Might be a weapon. So Durin's Bane might have been a particular weapon, a sword or axe or knife that slew the Dwarven King. A weapon passed down from Orc Chief to Orc Chief, a symbol of the Orcish triumph over the Dwarves, a symbol to rally the tribes of the Misty Mountains to new atrocities and conquests. Or it might be betrayal from within, a member of your party. That is particularly pertinent later on when we go through the solo stuff. That might be an option that appears there. But it's not just the, we might not have expected the slave dwarfs to be an enemy in Moria, but we would have done the other orcs and the Balrog and that kind of thing. But what else is there? Other foul things. In the long centuries after its fall, Khazad-dum has attracted all sorts of living and unliving creatures. These entities described in the next sections are just examples of the horrors that the player heroes may encounter when braving the darks of Moria. So we have ash wraiths, evil spirits conjured by the orcs of Durin. We have cave bats. Bats of many kinds dwell in the Misty Mountains. They are mostly evil beasts allied with the goblins. Small-eared bats nest in the air vents and upper halls of Moria. It may be possible to find concealed entrances into the underground city by searching the mountain slopes for the overgrown cave mouths that the bats emerge from at twilight. And then, again, cave bats, the great carrion bat. We have these, I've never heard of these before, marrow eaters, another dark foe from the deep places. Stone toads. Now, I had a look to see if I'd heard of stone toads before in Tolkien's work. I can't recall any of it, but maybe you do. If you do, let me know in the comments. And we have tappers. Tale of tappers are as old as the first hall, and yet in all that time no dwarf has ever laid eyes on a tapper, and the nature of the entities remains a secret. They are basically an evil spirit. Cave dogs of Moria. Okay, right now, here is the most important thing that you can see walking through the halls of Moria. The mansions of the dwarves. So this is the largest part of the book describing landmarks and hazards in the various regions of Moria. And what I love about this is it doesn't just give you a list of kind of locations and that kind of thing. It really does flesh it out. So we'll start here, the Dimrill Dale. And what it does, it gives you a map of an area. It has numbered parts of what the different parts of the locations are. It gives you more information. It will give you some information about people that you might hear. Here we have the mounds of, here we go, Azanul Bazaar. So again, lots of different locations, all numbered. There's someone you can meet there. Tig the scavenger. A little bit of information about Tig, what he's doing there. With the East Gate of Moria, along with a little bit of history about the East Gate, and then description of kind of how it looks, what's important about it, what interesting things could happen there. Now we're going to Old Moria, and again it's all laid out the same sort of way, but what we find is that we will start to get into things like, there you go, the reek bats. So its own individual enemies that you might appear in these rooms. The reek bats. So I found this one really interesting. No one is quite sure if reek bat is a horribly twisted goblin or something that Malek fished out of the deepest pits. It is goblin-like in size and shape, but long folds of fetid skin stretch between the creature's ankles and wrists. It's something between a bat and a horrible hairless squirrel. It shuffles around in an ungainly fashion, but can glide and flip between pillars of the second hall. So we start to find out more enemies as we go through these areas. Not just that, but further enemies that we might find. So for example, if I get through to, I had it before, so you can see all the different locations here. It's massive. So we've got Hagrot the Sneak. So he's an enemy in there. but then it tells you later on that other people might be his allies. Perhaps if you slay him in that hall, by the time you get to the next one where one of his allies is, or it might be his boss, or it might be his best friend, or that sort of thing, perhaps they get a bit more angry because you've slain their friend, or perhaps it's an enemy of theirs, and maybe they'll start to warm to you a little bit more if they know that you've snuffed out someone that they don't like. But there are so many different locations, and they're all well described, all with lots and lots of different enemies and that kind of thing. It really is superb. So I'll tell you what, well, let's go through this in terms of those areas and kind of describing Moria in this way. That covers but 100 pages of the book, over 100 pages of descriptive knowledge of what you can find in Moria and how it might affect your game. The Watcher in the Water. Absolutely superb. Okay, and then finally there's an appendix. Sorry, not finally. There's an appendix that describes the largest expedition to brave Moria. Balin's expedition from 2989 to 2994. And magical treasures that might be found in Moria. It also presents a new playable subculture of dwarves, the dwarves of Nogrod and Belegost. Okay, but it is an appendix. And again, it just throws out more information that you can use or not on your adventures. Okay, so that's not a huge section, kind of 12 pages or so. Right, solo play in Moria. Reclaiming Khazad-dum. In Lord of the Rings, we learn of Balin's ill-fated expedition to reclaim the hallowed underhalls through the eyes of the Fellowship, who come upon Balin's tomb and the mouldering bones of dwarves pierced by goblin arrows and spears. Balin's kind of adventures, or his expedition, is what we do in the solo play for Moria. So what we do is we build a band of dwarves that we take with us, and there are tables here to fill them out. It's basically like a very, very reduced character sheet. So it's got things like name and title, quirks and notes, gift, kingly gift, and then details of injuries and fatigue, right? And then we put our notes in there as well. You build up a band of those. It can be as many as you want it to be. You can have a very, very small band of maybe 4 of you, or you can expand it much further up to maybe 12. But it allows you to have your main character and play it within a kind of band of dwarves. And the bit we were talking about earlier, the patrons that you work with for your adventuring. In this case, in solo play, it is Balin. It's always Balin. There's information here that links in with the Strider mode, which was released for the One Ring, and it kind of complements the Strider mode very much. But crafting your player hero, so it's done differently to what you would normally do. And so things like the goals of when you make individual goals and that kind of thing for your character players, when you're doing normal adventuring, what you will do here is there will be an expedition goal. So all of your expedition party that come with you will effectively have the same goal as you. It tells you how to put it together and the various different kind of personalizations that you can put together. There's a roster sheet here as well, which will help you to keep an eye on all of your different allies. So it's got the conditions, which is the injuries and fatigue, which I spoke about on the previous page. You go through improving the band and role playing your allies. So just basically a trimmed down way for them to take their turns and carry on their game. Now, shared callings. When you create your player hero, choose a shared calling for you and your band instead of one unique to your character. Table below lists the available callings and their associated features. So it is, you are kind of flitting between playing both DM and player. But basically, for the core part of the DM and the world building, you just go by all of the different tables to kind of generate your world, and then you just use your imagination to tie in how your adventure goes. But what I will say is, as a solo mode, it is well fleshed out. There is a lot going on here. There are, let's see, if you excuse the index, your solo section, about 36 pages. It's significant. There's a lot of information here. There's a genuine ability to have some real meaningful solo play sessions and kind of play it through as you would a normal RPG, albeit in the framework of the rules that they've got here. And then finally, we've got an index. So that is the Moria expansion. Moria Through the Doors of Durin, and Moria Shadow of khazad-dum. So obviously I like it. I really like it. It is such an excellent addition to the series. When you think about the history of the Lord of the Rings, so for most people that are into Tolkien, the Lord of the Rings is the core section of what goes on there. And in terms of Moria, for fans of if you watch the movies, you might think that they were in Moria for about 7 hours or 8 hours. They were in there for about 4 days, according to the books. So 4 days across the Lord of the Rings books is not a long time at all, but it's such a massive and significant portion of that world that I'm really, really pleased that we get books like this to kind of develop that world in front of our eyes, because it really deserves it. And this is a real kind of fantastic progression for the One Ring. I often think of kind of looking forward to see what could happen next. What areas or what focus could the next expansions have? There could be a whole book like this just about the Fangorn Forest. I'd love going forward for big settings in Gondor and the Fangorn Forest, getting up to Angmar, where some of that is sort of covered in Eriador books as well. But yeah, to cut a long story short, I'm a massive fan of what's going on with these books. It really is brilliant. The One Ring as an RPG has always been, very, very good. But this, for me, in terms of world building and opportunities for greater adventures, this turns it up a notch. This turns it up to 11. So I'm a massive fan. If you're on the fence, for me, I would say, get in there and do it. Now, going forward, around about a month's time or so, I'm going to do a few solo playthroughs. I'm going to record them and see how they turn out. If I think they're good, I'll definitely upload them. But for me, if you're on the fence with this, very, very, very definitely consider it, especially if you love reading about the lore and the world building and that kind of thing. Hang on a second, here's that map I was talking about earlier. So that map that's kind of on the inside cover, this is the map that comes with it. So can't even get it all on the screen. It's superb, absolutely superb. It is double-sided as well. With lots of kind of player stuff on there. This will do with actually with combat. So yeah, very cool. But yeah, I'll leave it there. Thanks very much for watching, guys. Much appreciated. Any questions about these books, just let me know and I will definitely answer them in the comments. And yeah, if you want to see more Lord of the Rings role playing or One Ring playthroughs and discussion, and there's going to be lots more videos about these going on in the sort of near future, definitely drop a subscribe. Tell me what you want from these books as well, and I will happily get to it. So thanks for watching, guys. Much appreciated. I will catch you later.